I think she can draw like a dream. I really do, and we're thrilled to present these works. And so let's let her tell us a little bit about how she does it.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure, and thanks for coming. And please ask questions, because that helps me. As I said to a couple people already, it is a lonely pursuit, sitting in my little room, and covered with charcoal and masks and gloves.
And believe me, I've been
And it truly is great to get out and kind of and talk to people and feel a response from it, and it helps me get started again. So I enjoy that very much. But as you can see, it's a bit of New York City, as I said last night in Charlotte, and so I kind of like that juxtaposition. And many of you have already picked out the neighborhood, so a lot of people that have been up north and know New York. But it's where I live and brought my family up, and you kind of have to use the subject matter that you're surrounded with. Jerald had some other landscapes, so I do landscapes, probably not as well as Wolf and McNichol and people, but they're from the south shore of Long Island because I spend a couple months there. So wherever I'm situated, I tend to draw it. And these are mostly charcoal and pastel, and black and white pastel with a few primary colors in, and I'll kind of talk about that if it doesn't bore you. But the interesting thing about drawing, and what I love about it, and I painted prior to this when I was very young and out of art school, is it isn't as precious as painting. It's just on paper, and it's just chalk. I mean, I basically call it chalk, and that was the beginning of all things, right? I mean, people started to write and put symbols down, and I don't think drawing has ever been elevated to the place in the art business and world like paintings and sculpture. It's always been a study for something. It's a study for an architectural drawing or a sculpture. And very few people use drawing just as drawing, and that is the piece, and it isn't for anything else. I love the fact that you can see the artist's hand in a drawing, and gesture and mark making is all very apparent. So the surface is really about how the artist is building it and making it. And the black and white, or the lack of color, for me, I was always very taken with TV and film, and film noir, I guess you can say, but that notion of a narrative moving quickly through, someone like, and I would never put myself in his place, but Woody Allen, and his sense of using black and white and filming a beautiful city, whether it's Paris or New York City. There's something wonderful about some mundane moment, like just two people going to a fruit stand, and you take it out of that context, and you blow up that mundane moment, and it becomes more so. And that's what I kind of love doing. These are just on a technical basis. They're on paper, and a couple of us were talking. It's Canson paper, which comes in big rolls. Or I take a paper towel and rub it and put more on. So very much the technique that I used painting, I use with the chalk. But it's not as precious. Don't like the piece, I throw the paper out and I can put something else on. And that has an immediacy to it. These are mounted on a kind of archival board now, the newer ones. And it's a very physical thing, lifting these and drawing on them. But that physical part of it is also the thing I love about drawing. I can get away from it and use my hand to climb a ladder and walk back from it. So all that stuff technically is very important to me. The subject matter and kind of how I work is I go out and I have a camera, an old Nikon camera, Canon camera now, around my neck, and I take lots of pictures. And I would say, and Jerald's been to my studio, I'd say close to thousands of pictures. And then just some of them strike me. I never use just one, not for any other reason, it just doesn't interest me. So I'll put the photographs up on the wall, and then I kind of would create this 28th Street picture, no people in it. And then I find the way to put the people in so that, yes, they can create a narrative. No, I don't do a lot of faces because the piece isn't so much about the individual person, but more of the movement of people. We know them by kind of how they dress, how they might tilt their head, and they become very much part of the composition. And I love that notion of the movement of a bag or a coat, or again, a tilt of a head. And then they're placed in these little dramatic theatrical scenes. And so that's, I stick my music on my ears, and that's how I start the work. And I work on probably this many, take one out, let's say almost this many at the same time. So I can go from a very large piece, a complicated piece, to a smaller piece over there. And I go back and forth all the time, but they are all hung at the same time in a very small space. So there's no air in between them. Which again is what's so interesting about framing them and putting them in a gallery and seeing them kind of almost in a different context. But they are a stream of consciousness, and I like to let them go and not work them too much, because I think then they lose a sense of movement and become more photographic. So it's a constant battle on how to work that. And again, the other important thing is going from very large to much smaller pieces, like in the front room. There's an intimacy of walking up to a piece, and then there's a very different feeling of standing back on a big piece. And I like to physically, again, do that in the studio, like stopping a video, and walking up to it. So that's the basic format on how I work. And I love having a project where, Jerald said, let's try to do a show. So it's 14 pieces or 12 pieces, I haven't even counted. And they all are part of this thing that I did, and it is a constant narrative.